The Gwart Show is sponsored by Ellipsis Labs. Ellipsis is building a world where mainstream finance happens on-chain. Their first product, Phoenix, a fully on-chain limit order book DEX on Solana, doing hundreds of millions of dollars in volume a day. I know this team personally. It's one of the strongest in the space. If you're interested in working with a team that's here to stay, Ellipsis Labs is hiring engineers passionate about DeFi to join their team. You can find Ellipsis Labs on Twitter at ellipsis_labs, or head to ellipsislabs.xyz to learn more and apply.
Welcome back, Max. You know, you're our second time appearance.
I do know that. I was telling everybody, I was like, did you know that I'm going to be on the Gwart Show? I'm going to be the first ever repeat guest in the history of the Gwart Show podcast.
Yeah, well, you're a great guest to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is the realignment of Ethereum. I think that's what I'm going to name the episode, the realignment.
That's
but, yeah, no one is more vocal about being a mechanism designer on Twitter than yourself. So welcome. Quickly introduce yourself. People should know you at this point, having been a two-time guest now, but feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I know. Like, I shouldn't need no introduction, but I guess I'll do it. So I'm the head of research at Special Mechanisms Group, which is part of Consensus. At Consensus, we manage basically everywhere where Consensus products touch the chain, and we work on specialized projects that relate to that. And we also do a lot of research on transaction supply chain, market microstructure of MEV, and related things.
Awesome. Well, you just got back from ETHCC, which is the
Free Air ETH conference, the second best conference that was going on at the time, according to Bitcoin Maxis.
Okay, well, what were your takeaways?
I thought it was a great conference. I thought the vibes were pretty good, given where the market was at, right? I thought it was good to see all the people you see on Twitter and you like kind of shit post and yell at them, and then you get together in person, you have a few drinks, and you realize, hey, we all just want what's best for Ethereum, right? And we may have different opinions about where to get there, but at the end of the day, our utility function is the same. And so that's a good feeling to have. And it was great. There's a ton of great events. I posted on my Twitter the ETHCC, post-ETHCC rewards of like awards of who was the best merge, who was the best talk panel. So you can go find that on my Twitter if you want to see it. But the Lido party was actually baller, by the way. It was like in a church.
Nice. Okay. Well, how do you feel about the general sentiment around Ethereum right now?
You know, I think if you asked me how I felt about the roadmap and where we're looking and what the discourse around what to do was, like, if you asked me that a month ago, I would have said, I don't know, I'm pretty bearish, because I felt like I've been yapping and other people have been yapping for a long time about where we needed to go, about a ton of topics that we're going to get into today, and nobody was listening. But then I got a surprise message from the big man himself, like I'd read about the CEO of Ethereum, Mr. Vitalik Peter, whereas I like to call him Vitamin Butane because I feel like that's like a cooler name. Anyway, I got a message from him, and he said, "Hey, I've been reading about multi-proposer. Interested in this? Like, over the last 20 minutes, I've been thinking about it, and I've become incredibly bullish on multiple concurrent proposer." So that was kind of one of the things. There was another big discussion where he put out a post that he had changed his mind about shorter block times, and he wanted Ethereum to get shorter block times. I think he called it by a different name because he didn't want to like call it shorter block times, but it was actually shorter block times. And I think those are the two biggest things that the unaligned people have been talking about. And so that's why I call it, this is kind of the realignment for Ethereum, where we have people that have been angry that they're not being heard, but have been saying the right things, are finally being heard. And that's why you probably see like a little bit less of a kind of angst on Twitter, because, we're finally being heard, and that's good. We can move forward and we can build the best Ethereum.
Okay. What do you think are the most likely of these improvements to get into Ethereum? Like, if you had to order, I don't know, maybe like asking a very vague question here, but like, what do you think seems to have like rough consensus versus what is more like still up in the air right now? And when I say up in the air, not just up in the air, but like people may completely disagree with the premise, right? Like not necessarily the implementation of it, but the entire premise. That makes sense, right? What do you think? Like, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that's very likely to go in is shorter block times. And I think we already have the first step to get there, which Mike was championing last time we were on the pod, which is Max EV. So just a quick summary of that proposal. Basically, right now, the maximum amount of effective balance, that's what EV stands for, that you can have on an Ethereum validator is 32 ETH, which is actually incredibly small. Like, to give you an idea of perspective, at consensus, I think we have about 3% of the stake. It's 15,000 nodes, roughly. So for us, that means that we're signing signatures at the end of the epoch with 15,000 nodes. And overall, it's like 800,000 nodes in the Ethereum network. But if you look at the number of actually synced full nodes, it's only 8,800 or around there. So what's happening is we have 800,000 signatures for what's actually around 9,000 entities. And that means we have to do these aggregation. And apparently there's some great libraries that is way out of my wheelhouse that do this pretty fast. But at the end of the day, it would be better if we just had, closer to 15,000 signatures to aggregate instead of 800,000. And that's one of the main bottlenecks for getting shorter block times right now, is that we have to basically do this signature aggregation. And I think we could meaningfully improve that as soon as Max EV goes in, because all the big staking providers, Coinbase, Lido, us, everybody else who's doing staking, will immediately migrate to these kind of larger effective balance wallets or validators, and that will reduce the number of signatures required to aggregate. So it's a really important proposal that I'm glad Mike's pushing.
Okay, quickly, how much ETH can go in once you have a new effective balance?
So I think it was 1024. I asked them to go up a little bit I think that number is 1024 in the current proposal.
So 1,024 ETH now can go into an individual validator as opposed to 32, right?
Yeah, that's 2 to the something, right? 1024 is 2 to the something. Anyway, it's the 2 to the something that's around 1,000. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just still minimum of 32 ETH. Isn't it kind of ironic that some of the qualms were with wanting to lower the amount of stake necessary to stake, and that the first proposal that comes along is actually to increase the max for validators? I mean, I understand why, right? I understand why it makes sense, but there's some irony in that. Okay. So, all right, let's talk about shorter block times. When you say that Vitalik didn't use the word shorter block times, what other word is there for it?
What did he call it? Something like increasing the cadence of Ethereum or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Right? We're going to increase the cadence. Okay. I think, he wanted to avoid you're just copying Solana accusation. So
yeah, of course.
But we should cadence.
How fast? How fast are we talking? 2 seconds?
2 seconds is a start. There's kind of a fundamental limit of the New York City to Tokyo round trip, which is around 200 milliseconds. So you can't get faster than that. We need a few rounds for consensus. So you really can't go much slower than that, or much faster than that, I mean. So I think 2 seconds would be a great start. We could probably get it down to 1 second. If you look at kind of the builder pipeline and where the blocks are constructed, that's happening at a much faster scale than this. But I think 2 seconds is a very reasonable goal. And the way I would implement it, if this was my job at the EF to say, let's figure out how to get to 2 seconds, is let's go to 6 seconds, then let's go to 3 seconds, then let's go to 2 seconds. And do that in subsequent hard forks. Because the problem of going from 12 to 2 is very hard, and it's hard to break that down into easy steps. But I would just say, immediately, let's start focusing on, for the next hard fork, let's go to 6 seconds. And what do we need to do that? And maybe we realize it's actually harder, so we actually go to 9 seconds first. But we need to start making incremental progress. Otherwise, if we just view it as this huge lift of the whole increase in speed, we're never going to make progress. So I would say, let's start by making the goal for the next hard fork to go to 6 seconds.
How does this change node composition? What burden does this now put on nodes, and at least from your view?
In in actuality, we've had the same minimum node requirements for the last 8 years, right? So I guess these people like don't believe in Moore's law or something. Like, of course, we can increase the node requirements at the level of Moore's law, right? I think we don't need to be able to run Ethereum on a Raspberry Pi from 8 years ago. We should be able to run an Ethereum node on a consumer desktop that costs, $1,000 today. And that's vastly different, not only because it's, slightly more expensive in today's dollars than the inflation adjusted Raspberry Pi was 8 years ago, but it's also, more importantly, benefited from the improvements in tech that we've had over the last 8 years with Moore's law.
Okay, wait, let me ask this more directly. Does this destroy the Raspberry Pis?
Yes.
Okay.
Good riddance.
Okay, but all right. Now, like, maybe.
Wait, let me just say, you will still be able to stake on consumer hardware, which is what most people do, and you will still be able to participate, even if you're not participating at validator, with consumer hardware. That is, you can still run a node with reasonable hardware, just not with a fucking chip that was designed to like operate a remote control car or something. It's designed to interact with the global financial network that we are all trying to build, right?
Okay. Do you think this is a pivot? Yes or no?
Yes, clearly it's a pivot. And I welcome it.
Okay. I talked to somebody, I'm not going to name names, but I talked to somebody like a year ago, and they said that we're getting 16-second block times. What changed?
I think we had very well-meaning people, first of all, very talented people, very smart people, who had a blind spot around MEV and user experience. And in their words, their goal was to build the protocol of Ethereum. And for them, single slot finality, Shrine PBS, these things that require additional communication were more important than the users. And when that came out, there was a big backlash from people who work on MEV. Alex Mislobin was one of them. I think the very first to kind of say this is ridiculous. And then there was a great paper by Jason, Siamak, and Tim about what this does to MEV. And there was also a lot of pushback from Hayden at Uniswap and basically people who said, hey, like users care about getting it, right? And so they had a lot of pushback and they said, oh shit, like actually we're at the point where we've succeeded in building Ethereum that we have users and we actually should start to care about those users and build what they want and make the system better for them. We don't need to keep building this abstract thing that we were building in 2013 when we saw Bitcoin and said, let's put smart contracts on it. Like we have users, we have data, we can see what people want, we can ask them and we can listen to them. And that's what happened. We started listening to users and builders who are building for users. And that's a good thing.
Okay, so then how do you reconcile this with the idea that most of the execution, most of all this activity was intended to go to L2s?
I think that was a bit of a blind spot. The L2 roadmap, I think, was just a big mistake, right? That was just, in hindsight, what were we thinking? Here's my guess of what happened. After the merge, there was a plan to do scaling through dank sharding. And dank sharding is basically a version of multi-proposer, I would say. What they couldn't figure out and they couldn't grok was how do you weave the multi-threads of the dank sharding together into an execution block that makes sense. So they abandoned it and they said, let's let other people deal with scaling. We ship the merge. We're the best. That was a huge engineering effort, by the way. The merge was kind of crazy that it happened.
Yeah. We hear this like every time. Okay,
let me glaze them up, Gwart, please. I'm
about the greatest feat of engineering in history.
Can I just glaze it up?
Go to Machu Picchu one time.
Okay, you gotta let me glaze these guys up. Okay,
go.
Anyway, it was hard. Like, okay, you can make fun of that, but it was really hard. Right?
No, I'm joking. We just like this is the most oft-repeated point in it. Like in the crypto community, is like the merge was transformational. I'm like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, we know that, like, you know, money blockchains already had proof of stake by the time that Ethereum did. But
anyways, go on.
So we did that, and they said, okay, well, we did this, like, let's let other people deal with the scaling. So we're going to let, you know, Ed Felton and whoever else deal with the scaling. And the issue that they didn't necessarily foresee is that there's no reason, other than that Ed Felton is a nice guy, for Ed Felton to build a product, get all the users, and then give a bunch of money to Ethereum for DA, when DA, which is data availability, is a commoditized thing now. And we saw that strategy play out with Base, where they're now basically charging a huge fee, much higher than what they're paying for the L1 data availability, and taking all the spread and telling us it's for their infra costs, which it's not. It's, you know, for the bonuses that the, you know, the higher ups at Coinbase are getting paid. But anyway, that was the big realization. Is like, hey, Coinbase is printing money at our expense, and we just shipped 4844, which basically gives them 100 times cheaper data availability for no reason. They were already printing money before 4844, and then we just like set their gas price to zero. And they said, thank you, we will keep our gas price the same, and, you know, maybe we'll pass a little bit on to users so they feel good, and we get in on the 4844 blob narrative, which is canonical. But then as soon as that's over, we're going to bring the prices back up and charge users what they're willing to pay, because Coinbase is a rational organization that's profit maximizing. Unfortunately, we didn't see far enough ahead to understand that this was the end game, that rollups have network effects and that they can use market power to keep rent for themselves, and there's no reason to give it to the L1.
Okay, let me chime in here. I want you to answer this question not from your perspective as somebody who works on consensus and is primarily focused on the L1. I want you to answer this question and tell me if you think this is a reasonable statement. The new shift back toward the L1 is a rug of L2s. Agree or disagree? Sorry, not agree or disagree. Is that a reasonable statement?
No.
Okay, why not?
Because I think we've given L2s all they use. We're not like going to the L2s and saying you can no longer withdraw. We're no longer going to respect your thing that you've built. We're not gonna claw back the users, right? That ship has sailed. But we're just gonna start competing with that. I don't think that's a rug. I think it's a, hey, we gave you a 1-year head start. You've done pretty well for yourselves, but now the big dogs are going to come back in and take back our users because we're going to build a better product, right? And, you know, you can try to compete with us on your box. You know, you can run Reth on your box. You can run your centralized sequencer and do your little grifty, like, what do they call it? The time boost, which is basically like, you know, a way to extract money from the users, right? You can do that if you want, but we're going to outcompete you, and we're going to be decentralized. So good luck. Right.
Okay. So, but you're saying, like you said, the well-meaning people did not have the foresight to realize that the roll-up-centric roadmap was a mistake. Okay. So what happens now? Like, what happens with roll-ups?
So I think there's a little bit of a scramble of, hey, what if we could make roll-up space, which is basically, what if we could make a roll-up that gives all the money to ETH?
Yeah. Okay. Like Justin Drake had this quote recently, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. He was like, after spending a lot of time on shared sequencing, I realized that the best sequencer is Ethereum itself. It's like, yeah, dude, that's what blockchains do. Like, oh, you came to that conclusion when you realized they were like taking all of the transaction fees, like all of the money was going to them. But I mean, all right, sorry. Go on. I think it's just like a hilarious quote. But like, oh, I'll chime in. Like our friend Eugene, right? Like he says base sequencing is like Solana at home, which I think is a very reasonable take on this.
Yeah. Sequencing, I just think like the only way that we can win is to focus on ourselves and not try to focus on the past and bring back these roll-ups through base roll-ups. It's just not going to work, right? Like we're going to have to build a product that people want because they don't want to like get raked up the ass by time boost. Like we're going to build a fair system that is not extractive, and that is going to be the differentiator on Ethereum.
Okay, so then
is not caught up to speed yet. they're going to listen to this podcast and go, shit. Oh, Solana, we need to work on this. Like, we're like building the maximally extractive system and letting everybody sandwich our users. Like, oh, fuck, like we need to like scramble. But right now, I think we have clarity that what we're going to do is build a system where not only are people nice so they don't extract, but they cannot extract significant value from the users. And everybody's just transacting and getting the gains to trade. And like Ethereum itself will grow as a result of that.
All right. So I don't think you entirely finished your thought because I interrupted you, and I do apologize for that. But what happens to these rollups then? Like you say, okay, we're going to build, like we're going to make the L1 great again. What happens to these rollups now? There's like one launching every day. Where do these go?
To zero.
Bars.
Well, other than Linny, obviously. Linny does not go to zero.
Yeah, that's
I think
yeah.
they're going to go to zero if they can compete. If they can provide a competing product that's compelling for users, good. There's a fundamental value of rollups, which is that they're compressing the state.
Right.
I think we can incorporate that potentially into the L1 itself. That's maybe what the end game of base rollups looks like, and that's probably something that we're going to have to use in our toolbox. But at the end of the day, if these rollups cannot figure out how to credibly signal that they're not going to extract a ton of value from the users, which they're not, they're doing the opposite of that right now with time boost, right? And what Base is doing. If they cannot credibly signal that to users, at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to win the long run. They might win.
Why do you say that Base is extracting a ton of value from users?
Because they're charging way higher fees than they need to charge, right?
Okay.
So it's not maybe like, I'm saying because Base is like charging a huge markup for the users, that is a signal to the market that they care about, but they're maximizing for one thing, and that's their own profit. Right?
Yeah.
It's a very short-term vision, I think.
Okay, so then you don't think base rollups, you don't think the current design of base rollups is going to work. What does then? Just back to the L1 then.
Let's go back to the L1. I think the thing is, like, we didn't realize that the marginal additional transaction for Ethereum isn't worth that much. Like, the transactions that are worth the most are the ones that are at the top of the block, that are like trading and all this stuff. And there's like a few marginal like transfers that are enabled, but the overall economic surplus of those things that you get from increasing the block space from like running fewer nodes and being less decentralized, et cetera, is not worth that much compared to like a functioning decentralized financial system for the first time in history. Right. And so I think we should optimize for like, make that as good as possible, make that as little extraction as possible. And when you do that, you're going to grow the pie. And then we can focus on making it bigger and better and faster, et cetera.
When you say that you're going to build an L1 where they can't extract, elaborate.
So right now, the way that a lot of this extraction happens is through the PBS auction. But it's not the PBS auction's fault. It's the structure of the L1's fault. There's one guy, the validator, Vicky the validator, or I should say Vitalik the validator, right? Vitalik the validator, he gets a 12-second monopoly on the state, on what goes in, what doesn't go in, which order it goes in. Anyway, this is a tremendously valuable thing. The Medboo's auction is clearing, on the order of $1 billion a year. And all of that money is basically extracted from the users. And what we need to do is send that number to zero and say, we're not going to keep making $1 million, $3 million a day from users every day on Ethereum and sucking it out of the system and giving it to Coinbase and passive ETH stakers, et cetera, which is what we're doing right now. So we're going to basically make the validator a very limited role and one that does not have a ton of power in the system by making them all compete with each other. And, what do you do when you have a monopoly? You break up the monopoly. You force competition. And that's basically what we need to do.
Okay, and this is as a result of 2-second block times and multi-proposer. Can you go into multi-proposer?
Well, first let me say something about 2-second block time. Like, if we get there, it will be a major improvement even without multi-proposer. So we should do it regardless of whether people agree with me on multi-proposer. But the thing we should add on after that is to do multiple proposer, which is like even within the 2 seconds, there are multiple validators who can propose things. And what they're going to do is each validator is going to propose some transactions. We're going to take the union of all of those transactions, and then that's the set of transactions that are in. Then we're going to apply a deterministic ordering rule, such as highest priority fee goes first, or something else. And that's going to be the execution block. Whereas today, the execution block is whatever Vitalik the validator said, ordered however Vitalik the validator said. So in the future, it will be whatever Vitalik the validator and Justin Drake the validator and Max the validator and Gwart the validator said, union together, ordered according to a deterministic rule like priority fee, highest fee goes first.
Sounds a lot like Solana.
Well, yeah, Solana. I think we're going to ship multi-proposer before Solana, but we'll see.
How do you feel like the community is responding to this? Like you said that a month ago, if you'd been asked that you've been somewhat bearish, and now you seem more optimistic. You just got back from ECC, like we talked about. How do you feel like the community is responding to like some of these pushes? Maybe you can break down those two specifically.
Yeah, I think now at this point, it's on us, the people who are for multi-proposer, to deliver a substantive spec of what this would look like and prove all the properties that we claim it has. So that's what I've been working pretty hard on recently, is just getting to that point so that the conversation becomes, it's no longer can we do multi-proposer, it's now should we do multi-proposer. We know it works. Here's the mathematical proofs. All the consensus experts can go check them and like post a check mark on Twitter and thumbs up. And then we can get to the meat of the question, which is like, should we do this? Are the benefits there? Are we willing to eat this additional complexity and consensus in order to achieve the benefits that we are going to get? So that's, I think, the next stage. It's funny because I like applied for an EF grant to work on this all the way back in like a year ago. And it was like a $25,000 grant. So basically nothing. And they rejected it because they said it's not practical. And now we're here. And I think it's like very clear that narrative has shifted, and we do think it's practical, and we just need to deliver an actual technical spec and a paper that says, here are the properties and here are the proofs of those properties, and let's do it.
Do you feel, I think the short answer to this is yes, but like, do you feel that the general direction of Ethereum is being influenced a lot by these alt L1s and what we're seeing elsewhere? I
think the realignment was triggered by a sense that we might be losing to Solana. And
go on.
What else is there to say?
Elaborate. I don't know.
All of the meme coins are launching on Solana. Everybody's talking about Solana. The normies are trading Geo Bodin on Solana, not on ETH, right? And we had to recognize that. We had to say, okay, what we are doing right now is not working because we're getting outcompeted by a team that doesn't believe mechanism design or something. And we're getting outcompeted by people that we should not be being outcompeted by, right? Cracked engineers, but they literally do not believe in mechanism design over there. And it turns out that there's 3 core pillars of any blockchain. One of them is cryptography. That's the first and most important. The second one is engineering. And the third, which is often forgot about, is mechanism design.
Dude, no one forgets about this. We hear this on Twitter all the time. Or
okay, all right.
Go on. Sorry, go on.
That's a dirty word, right? It's there's so many LARPers, mechanism design LARPers that hey, the people that actually prove theorems are getting a little bit of a bad name because there's token designers who are claiming that they're a mechanism designer and LARPing about this. Anyway.
Yeah, but I think the reason that mechanism design, at least from the way that I've seen it and subsequently troll about it, is just a lot of these people are brilliant. They get absolutely nerd sniped in the weeds. And then they are very certain that their solution is the solution, right? And this is a fairly common occurrence, I would say. And to add on to that, I think that there is some undercurrent maybe that the mechanism designers can design optimal solutions, and they are certain that the market can't do that for itself. And I think that when it comes to expressive blockchains, very expressive blockchains, that may be partially true, but there's also a lot of competing ideas, right? So on that note, there's a bit of a ramble, but I was just giving you my perspective. What are where do you see pushback on some of the things you're saying? Like who's like not in agreement with you?
Yeah. I would say the people who are into base rollups and pre-confirmations, I think we're fundamentally opposed, not because we don't like each other, but because multi-proposer is not compatible with pre-confirmations, because you no longer have the pre-confirmation exists because we know that Vitalik, the validator, will be the monopolist in 12 seconds. And so he can make us some advanced guarantees about what he's going to do with his monopoly power. And so that's fundamentally incompatible with my proposal and our proposal, which is let's get rid of the monopoly power. And no longer will there be anybody capable of providing a pre-confirmation, because nobody has dictatorship over the things that you would like to have a pre-conf over.
How does this change the makeup of block builders?
A lot of people have been asking, like, hey, won't there still be block building? Like, no, like the whole reason that we have block building is because of the monopoly, right?
Right.
So I get frustrated a little bit when I talk to people about this, because you have to look a few steps ahead. If we get rid of the monopoly, then there will be way, way, way less money available. And so these shops that are currently operating builders, but also do a bunch of other trading and shit, will go and do other stuff that is worth more than building, because the total market for building will be vastly diminished. And there may still be some MEV solutions, like making sure that you get into one of the multi-proposers blocks, or making sure you get in as fast as possible. But overall, compared to the current amount of outlay that is happening at the PBS auction, which again is basically only the proposer monopoly, there's just $1 billion a year of proposer monopoly sucking money out of the system. That will go away. And there may still be something there for, like, Urea Blockstrat to provide a fast way to get in if you want to trade, right? But the overall value of that will be way down. And these shops that also do trading will just focus on trading.
Thanks for listening to The Gwart Show on the Blockspace Podcast Network. Subscribe to our newsletter at blockspace.media to get the show directly to your inbox. Show links, transcripts, and Bitcoin articles twice per week. Stay ahead of the conversation by visiting blockspace.media.
Do you think the EF is coming to your side? Like, what is your, you don't have to like name. I mean, I know it's like a diverse set of people, but like, do you think the Ethereum Foundation is in agreement with like most of what you have put forth?
I think we broadly agree that MEV is not a good thing. So That's maybe where the agreements end. But again, I think it's on me to produce a spec that convinces them. It's not on them to trust me, bro, like to believe that what I'm saying when I haven't delivered a spec. So I'm going to deliver a spec, and then we can see if they're in agreement or not.
Okay, I want to ask like maybe more specifics, and if you can give like ELI 5 answers to this. Ethereum goes from 12 seconds to 2 seconds. What are the massive unlocks as a result of this? Like less MEV, but like maybe put aside like the multi-proposer thing for a second and just talk about like much shorter block times. Maybe the reason, like I should give a little context. Maybe the reason I'm asking is like, okay, Ethereum gets to 2 second block times. Solana is at what? Like millisecond block times? Am I right? Or I mean, like 400 milliseconds, is that right?
No, the real block time on Solana is
1.6 seconds. Okay.
Because like I said, they have 400 millisecond block time, but even within the blocks, they have shreds and whatever. But the leader rotates every 1.6 seconds. That is the block time.
Okay. So what are the massive, sorry, that was I immediately like digressed with my own question. What are the massive unlocks you see with moving from, let's say, like the extreme case, 12 seconds to 2 seconds ultimately?
I think this would basically, we know from the complicated math that all of the people smarter than me have done on how much this will reduce LDR. So immediately, we're just shaving off $100 million of toxic flow value. Immediately. Just, hey, we're returning that to the users right away. Okay. The second unlock is it makes sandwiching more difficult. Why? Because when you submit a transaction to a DEX, there's a parameter you set that's called your slippage tolerance. And there's a fundamental tension between setting your slippage tolerance tight to protect yourself against sandwiches and sending it loose so that you can be more flexible in case there are other trades or other things happen before your trade lands on chain. And so you just reduce the amount of time that it takes to land on chain. For example, 2 seconds from 12 seconds. Now you're competing against, on average, 1/6 of the transactions. And so the slippage tolerance you need to set can be much tighter, everything else being equal. And that is going to reduce energy. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, maybe like let's talk about like slightly more, I don't know, user facing. Like, does this bring trading back on Ethereum? Not to say that it like entirely left, but like, does this change the dynamics? Like, do you think that this brings trading back to the L1? Like you're talking about like the Solana meme coins, right? Like this, you saw Ethereum losing to some extent to these meme coins. Like, does this come back to Ethereum as a result?
Yeah, I think it does, because right now the kind of median time to execute on Helios, which is the like RPC provider, is 1.6 seconds, right? And if we're 2 seconds, I think we're a lot more competitive than we are at 12 seconds, right? And actually, if we were at 2 seconds, the median time to execute would be 1 second, because the average arrival of a transaction is halfway through the block. So we would be closer to 1 second. We would even be faster than kind of the fastest that you can expect to be the most sophisticated Solana user using Helios right now.
Oh, okay, what about transaction fees?
Yeah, so the faster so I think it would basically make transaction fees lower. We have a paper about transaction fees. If you have, I can only speak to it from a perspective of what if we had the Bitcoin mechanism, because 1559 is like very complicated and scuffed. But from the perspective of a priority fee mechanism, which again means like whoever pays the highest fee gets sequenced first. So you got to plop yourself into the queue and then you get pulled out as there's space for you. We know that in those kinds of systems, the fee that you have to pay is proportional to your wait time, your expected wait time. Because basically paying a fee allows you to skip the line.
Right.
And so we know that if you lower the wait time by making blocks faster, then that term in the expression of how long is your wait time will go down, and so your fees will go down.
Okay, I want to like slightly switch gears just because this that reminded me of something. I don't know if you've heard, but Kyle Samani says that.
Who?
Kyle Samani. He's this like he's a contrarian. I don't know if you've heard this, but he's a contrarian.
You should cut that out because I'm just kidding. Don't cut that out. Kyle
Okay.
Could use it. You go check.
Okay. He thinks that the value of an L1 ultimately reduces down to the MEV you can extract. Go ahead.
It's so wrong. It's just so. Honestly, you know what? Cut out the part where I said I was sorry for saying who, because that is just such an absolutely stupid take. Okay. The value of the L1 is the total value of the trades that it makes possible, right? In economics, you have somebody who values something at $8 and another person who values it at $10, and you give it to the person who values it at $10 from the guy who values it at $8, and you've made 2 units of utility for the system, right? That is the value of a blockchain, is the value of the exchanges that it facilitates by being a trusted intermediary, by being a secure place to store your money. It is not how much you can squeeze out of the users. Make something people want and then take some money, you know?
Yeah, I think his point is with regard to staking, maybe he comes at it from that angle. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but I think his point is that ultimately staking trends to zero in terms of cost. So then how do validators make money? Well, priority access to state, right? And like when you can give priority access to state, when you can have that short monopoly, if you will, even if that's maybe going to change or isn't exactly the case, but when you have that short monopoly, you can extract as a function. And I think that's kind of his point. It's an interesting one. I don't know. Like, I guess you just functionally disagree. I guess the thing about saying this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's come out of the changes to issuance discussion, which I don't want to get into too deeply, is that basically if you read these posts, it becomes clear that what really matters for the decision whether to stake or not is the relative difference between the yield that you get on your token in the staking system versus out of the staking system.
Right.
And so what does that mean? Few consequences, like if you're going to stake your ETH or not, what matters is the difference between the real yield that you get as a staker and not as a staker. And it doesn't matter how much the value of the US dollar is and how much the yield on the US dollar is. It only matters the yield on ETH. The relative yields between ETH and USD will come out of the price of ETH, not it. The decision on whether to stake or not.
Yeah, but these like ultimately end up, okay, this is one of my
you're
qualms.
just telephone tagging me with this opinion, and maybe Kyle like would I don't know if I understand Kyle's like opinion.
Okay, well maybe I'll have to have him on. Like, I'll hopefully have him on to explain. But like the thing is with this is like the unstaked yield versus the staked yield. Like in an efficient market, this converges. Like this is the thing, right? So like on Aave, if you lend naked ETH, you should get roughly staking yield. So like this sort of just like evens out anyhow, right?
No, but it converges, but it converges at a level of stake, right? Because the curve, the yield curve for stake is variable depending on how much is staked. So if you look at like it'll converge, I agree with you to a point at which the yield you can make on Aave is, or whatever the best outside option is the same. That's just a efficient market hypothesis claim. That's no arbitrage claim, even stronger than efficient market hypothesis, right? Just because that's true doesn't mean there's going to be nobody who stakes. It's going to be an amount who stakes that sets those two things to be equal. It's going to be whatever.
Well, I think that, okay, sorry. Like I guess my point was a little bit unclear. The secondary result of this argument is that everybody stakes. That's the long run, right? Like, so do you disagree with this? Like, is Ethereum set up functionally now? I've heard a lot of these issuance, discussions such that not everybody stakes.
I mean, yeah, I think basically it's very clear that currently issuance schedule is not designed to stop the cart from falling down the hill. We're headed towards a very large percentage of ETH staked.
Is this good or bad?
I don't think it's good.
Okay, what are your
world, but I would like it to be not that. I would like it to.
So how do you get away from that?
To be honest, I don't think that we will. I think we're probably not gonna touch issuance because there's too many people with too much vested interest in issuance or redefi that.
Yeah,
we're not gonna change it.
But like the fact that what you said there's like too many people with vested interest, like that unto itself is like a little bit elucidating in terms of like vectors of centralization, right? You have Coinbase and Lido and Kraken, and like because they have structured their businesses, their protocols around a certain notion of stake, like this sort of does, I would say, confirm the idea that a lot of it ends up staked and a lot of it ends up staked with these entities.
Yeah, but I don't think that this is like the end of the world because the way it works is if you have influence, you can stop stuff from getting through, but you can't push stuff through because the bar for like the veto power bar is like much more skewed in favor of not doing things than doing things. Like even if Vitalik really wanted to do something and he had the support of Coinbase, so those two together probably couldn't push something out that was like unpopular with the rest of Cordeps and the rest who have a say in this, right? So I don't think it's the end of the world. There's this concept in economics called Pareto efficiency, which is basically, are we at an allocation point where we cannot make everybody better off by moving? So any way we make one person better off, we have to make at least one other person worse off. The reason this is an interesting idea is because it's kind of a subjective claim between any two Pareto efficient points as to which one's better. And so if you make a change like issuance, which is going to hurt some people and probably overall increase efficiency, but help some other people, it's not clear that that is the thing we should allow ETH governance to do, because that would be allowing ETH governance to make a subjective statement about the welfare of one person being more valuable or less valuable than the welfare of other people in the community.
Yeah, so but isn't that what they're doing with like pulling execution back to the L1? Isn't this the same as rugging all the L2s?
Part of the Ethereum community, they've just said that they're Ethereum aligned so that they can get users. I mean, they're building their own chain. They're branding it as their own chain, and they're saying we're posting to the L1 because we're aligned. Okay, no, you're Arbitrum. You're Optimism. You're StarkNet and zkSync. You are your own brand. You are not a base rollup on Ethereum that is providing zk compression, right?
I mean, I agree with that. It is interesting. Like, and I'm not criticizing you.
One of the core dev teams is owned by the Arbitrum team, right? So.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, quickly, I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think of Eigenlayer? What do you think about restaking?
Oh, I mean, my thoughts on restaking are that it's a brilliant invention, because we can finally give North Korea the tools to attack two protocols for the price of one.
I like that response. Do you see anything viable coming out of restaking? Like, there's been talks about, like, for example, these like pre-confirmations and like these AVSs being able to offer, you know, XYZ. Like, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, AVS sounds like an STD, to be honest. Like, I think I learned about that health class. Like, probably should use protection so you don't get one of those. But for some reason, everybody and their mother is flopping AVS onto their pitch deck so they can get more money, right?
But are there any AVSs that are viable? Like what are the use cases right now? I actually don't even know.
I mean, I guess EigenDA is like a real thing potentially, right? Unless discuss DA as a commodity.
Okay.
Sure, I was like shitting myself. Like, why did I give the 20 suggestion? I'm not Max right now. Anyway, just kidding. I would never take that. I would take that from Sriram because I want to.
You're so virtuous.
I'm so virtuous. No. Anyway, it's mathematically impossible for any particular ABS to provide more than 3% a year return on economic security, because you could just go ahead and like do that without an ABS and get your own economic security from staking and pay them 3%. So you might get, like, for each ABS, the added value of being a restaked product is at most 3%. And that is like an incredibly bearish statement for a venture-backed ecosystem with hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars being dumped into it every day, right? Oh, nice. The only thing you can do is provide 3% a year. Mathematically impossible to do anything better than that. Prove me wrong, Eigenlayer bros, but I really don't see it going anywhere.
Okay, I like it. Edgy. All right, we're gonna, like, I have some more sort of different direction to finish up. Like, you have been consistent on saying, like, if Ethereum is just this DA layer for rollups, like, it will lose. So props there. And also, you have always been consistent on, like, let's improve the L1. Anyways, not trying to, like, you know,
don't boost your ego. My ego.
Yeah. No. But I just, like, I want to just, like, the reason I'm saying this, to be, like, quite frank with you, is because I think there is a lot of inconsistency in Ethereum. Like, I think there's a lot of pivoting, but Ethereum has this, like, god tier ability to pivot, but make it seem like it's not a pivot. Like, from sharding to dank sharding, like, you know, these are very, very, like, sharding is a term in database management where you break up a database into shards. And that is not what the roll-up centric version of sharding was, right? But it's like, if you add the name in there, it's like, oh, we can, like, maintain this vestige of sharding by calling it dank sharding. But anyways,
I'm pretty sure, like, the way that was not supposed to work in the original, like, database management textbook was, like, you don't just, like, break up your database into 4 pieces, hand one to Ed Felton, hand one to our, like, top
exactly,
and one to, you know, Starkware, etc. Like, that's not the way it was supposed to work, right?
Right.
Like, it's supposed to be, you have concurrent stuff going on. They don't really talk to each other that much. In fact, we have financial activity on all of them. It should probably be composable, and it should probably stay on the L1. Anyway, to your question of how are we going to win?
Yeah.
How are we going to win? We are going to have better clarity and better ideas than everybody else. And we're going to announce on ETH Research exactly what you're going to do, what we're going to do. And if you want to read ETH Research, you can do it too. And you'll probably win because you'll probably ship it faster than us because we're Ethereum and we're slow. My guess is that we're going to ship it faster anyway because we have the people who ultimately, we have the best people, honestly. And
right, but this Max, this is all hand wavy. Like I'm asking specifically. You can't just come on here and hand wave. I let some people come on here and hand wave, but I'm not gonna let you come on here and hand wave. Like why do you pull all the activity back to Ethereum? I mean, you can give a simple answer like all the liquidity is on Ethereum. This is like the go-to, right? Like that. I'm just asking, like, you see Solana, you see all these meme coins launching, you see like the retail activity there. Now you're trying to push the L1, right? Like I said, you've been consistent on this. Why does Ethereum end up winning with now like sort of moving in the direction of some of these faster, more, performant, if you will, chains?
Because we're not going to extract. We're not going to extract the same way that they are. And you're going to go there, you're going to make a fast transaction. Then they're going to, people are going to realize, oh, this shiny new object looks pretty good. And then other people are going to come. And then the sandwich bots are going to come. And they're going to start taking 1% off every trade you do. Every day. And so if you're trading 30 meme coins 3 times, a day, your money's going to be gone by the end of the month because of the sandwich bots taking money out of your pocket. And the apps raking you, everything like this, right? That's not a good experience for users, even though it's fast. And so we're going to be less extractive than everybody else. And people are going to want to come because they know that they're not getting pickpocketed every time they make a trade.
What do you see? Like, there's been this, ongoing discussion about too much infrastructure, not enough apps. First of all, do you agree with this?
Well, I don't agree with it, actually. I think we didn't build the right infrastructure for apps. And so you can't like learn differential geometry before you master calculus. Like, let's get the infra that we need in place. There's a bunch of focus on infra that's not infra. It's just a branded token.
Yeah.
Where you get some of the, we have built in the past great infrastructure. And if you try to develop on Ethereum versus on other chains, it's very clear that a lot of that great work that's been done and is continuing to be done makes it easier for an EVM chain and specifically for Ethereum, right? So we're investing basically in making it easier to make apps. Now, I think what the sentiment that you're saying there, there's too many infra projects, is there's too many infra projects that are just designed to launch a token and go away. And the way that the founders make money in those projects is not, let me produce value and then take a small percentage of the overall value I create for myself and buy a Bugatti and retire, because I made so much value for the world that I can take a very small percentage of it and live very comfortably. It is, I'm going to launch a branded token, ship it out the door, hope the reg risk isn't too much for my token. And I always win that way. So that's the issue, is there's too much branded infrastructure that's designed to sell a token and not enough real infrastructure that's designed to make apps better.
Yeah, but like, what apps do you think? All right, like what apps are the big unlocks to you?
I'm not sure if ZK is fake or not, but the apps like Succinct that let you like compile Rust to a circuit, so you don't have to make a custom circuit, is like a huge unlock.
Dude,
right?
This is infrastructure you're talking about.
That's infrastructure. I'm sorry. What apps are the unlock?
Yeah,
trading, right?
Yeah, trading what? Trading meme coins for eternity.
I think we might see trading real coins. We might see trading, Eurodollar on chain if we could make something that's, that's the Eurodollar is the final boss. If Eurodollar starts happening on chain, we've won.
Okay, dude, I agree with you, like 100%. With that said, this is the most like defeatist attitude toward a blockchain. Like, in my opinion, stable coins being the end game, which for what it's worth looks very much like the case right now. This is like just embarrassing to me. Like, dude, the government, like, nobody cares what chain stable coins are on. I do not believe this. Like, USDC will always just go, or the government will always just go to USDC and say, block this address, right? Like, they're never trying to shut down validators. Like, they wouldn't try to shut down Solana either. They wouldn't try to shut down a chain with 3 validators, right? Like, once you're trading around centralized stable coins, who cares? Like, proof is in the pudding with USDT on Tron. Although I don't really believe those numbers for what it's worth. I think it's all like a scam. But to the extent that you believe any of that, like, so I just think that stable coins is like the end boss is like, oh dear, like, we have truly failed here.
I don't think stablecoin transfers that's the end game. I think it's like exchanging on chain. Like, if we could get there, I think there's probably about a 10% chance we can get there in the next 20 years, and we can just eat all of finance, and that's like pretty bullish. And we can just make, like, the fact that currently in finance Eurodollar spreads are so low is awesome, and it enables a bunch of stuff that we don't necessarily see. It's like you can round trip Eurodollar for less than 1 bit. Like, that enables so much trade between the US and the EU that we don't even think about it. Like, it enables so many bets that you wouldn't be able to make because the futures markets are so tight and the options markets are so tight, because you could hedge those bets for a very small spread, right? That is so big. And I think we want to just bring that to a bunch of other stuff, like to options, to everything else. And if we could do that, that would be awesome. And we can also make it like more permissionless. It might not be completely permissionless. There might still be some government oversight, but you probably still get to use it in more cases than if it's like the bank. Like, the bank just absolutely sucks as a product, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think anybody really disagrees now that like ACH and wires, like, I just from the retail level, right? Like, this stuff should not exist. It is so obvious that like sending a stable coin across the world for pennies on the dollar is like so much better of an experience and like, going through the traditional financial system. But like, with that said, I mean, this is, once again, people like centralized stables, and beyond this, right? Like, once you start talking about like real world assets or whatever, like, these are all ultimately backed. Like, sounds like Bitcoin maxi cringe right here, but like, this is all backed by like the violence of the state, all of it. And I think there are, like, actually, it's funny, like, Eugene says this really well, and like, I probably take it a different direction than he does, but like, he's like, we're making a vampire attack on TradFi. So if anything, we just force traditional finance to get, their act together. But I don't know that like a lot of these ideas about what can be done with blockchains are really that viable, because you get to a point where like they need, some type of like regulatory oversight, at which point, okay, we can do this on a database, right? Like that's where I fall.
I think like you probably have certain applications that you want to run on something that's more secure than a box, and it's more robust than a box to shutting down. That's the first point. I think you want, like, China is not going to want to participate in a financial market that is hosted by a box on AWS Swap. Because if China has a disagreement with the US, then the US can go to the AWS one, server farm and zero out the Chinese government's balances, right? But if you have something where there's no way to do that, and provably no way to do that, we might be able to have a global financial system that is run on the same network. And we don't have that right now. And that would be a huge unlock.
Yeah, but the assets that China, okay, I mean, I try to play this out, right? But like, the assets that China would be like, what would be an asset that China would want to be distrusting of its counterparty interacting with that is better on a blockchain. You see my point?
But I think the thing that China might be worried about is that their strategic oil reserves, which are held in Saudi Arabia, or are about to be produced in Saudi Arabia, are controlled on a US East 1 server. And if the US government wants to fuck with that, then they can go and do that, right? That would be, so it might not be a US based asset that they're concerned about, but if there's a kind of US East 1 ref on a box, that is where this is all heading towards, that has multiple assets from multiple different countries enforced by the violence of multiple states, then you might have state A transacting with state C in an asset that is backed by the force of the government of state B. And that would be...
Yeah. This is what Doug from Ambient says. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, this is his premise. There's never been a market where there's credible neutrality, and the only way to do this is a blockchain. Yeah, I mean, I remain fairly skeptical of the premise, but okay, we have to move on to a couple last things. So we gotta talk about Solana. What do you think about MEV on Solana right now? I mean, you kind of kept throwing subtle shade at the sandwiches and whatnot. I mean, what are your thoughts? How are they dealing with MEV?
I mean, just hit my line and we'll fix it in the day. But right now, what's going on there is, fine in the short term, but you cannot continue to do quality of service based on stake.
Yeah.
Because what will happen is that the stake will centralize in the hands of people who have the most value for quality of service. And those people are trading firms. And even worse than trading firms, they are predatory sandwich bots. And we already see it going on. You've seen it on Twitter that they're bidding with each other for stake. The largest validator right now is controlled by a trading firm. That's publicly visible on chain. It's not going to be Mert and Helios controlling the majority of the stake, unfortunately. It's not going to be Phantom. It's not going to be even Ellipsis, even though we know Eugene and Jerry are very smart, right? Because they still, even though they have users and apps that want good quality of service, are not running a trading firm. And trading firm is the thing that values us the most. So, what happens to goods in a free market when one person values them more than the other is that the person who values it the most pays the other person to give to them. And that is exactly the equilibrium that we're heading towards. And that is not a good equilibrium.
So, what is the fix for Solana then?
I think you need to do some metering. So basically the real issue is that the bandwidth, this is from my reading of it, is the bandwidth allocation system is broken. And so they put in a quick patch, was this stake weighted quality of service where you give more bandwidth to people with higher stake.
Yeah.
So that was a quick patch, and it did kind of solve the problem in the short term. But in the long term, you need to find a way to price that bandwidth market in real time and prevent and decouple it from stake, because stake has so many other things in the network. It actually, if you ever get to a point where a sandwich bot has more than 33% of the stake in the network, they will just double spend. They will just maliciously reorg the chain. This is a blockchain. We have a trust assumption that says, greater than 33% of the stake cannot be held by a malicious entity, and we're instituting a system that pushes all of the stake to the sandwich bots. I don't know, maybe they'll be making so much money sandwiching that they won't take out the chain, because double spending the chain would be killing lay the golden egg, but that's also a pretty bad situation in my view.
Well, also the Solana Foundation took away stake from validators that were sandwiching. Which
it's funny that was the headline, right? Isn't that funny that Solana Foundation stopped sandwiching instead of Solana Foundation was providing stake to people who were sandwiching for hunts?
Yeah, I mean,
good on them for taking it away. Now the sandwichers have gotten even more sophisticated at hiding what they're doing. So it's harder to find them. And
I don't think I think, we can sit here and cast aspersions and certainly I don't disagree, but at the same time, you can it is not unreasonable to look at Ethereum and in fact look at Uniswap just in aggregate and conclude that the reason that Uniswap exists, the reason the liquidity exists, is for arbitrage. That, and I know this doesn't sound so revelatory, but when you think of it, the aggregate use case is for these arbitrageurs. It kind of shakes up how you view trading. I don't think that's an unreasonable conclusion. Do LPs make money? Why do LPs LP?
No, I mean, it's incredibly bearish. I mean, I don't like this narrative of LDRs about the LPs making money, because the LPs should make in expectation the risk-free rate plus the risk premium for what they're doing because of efficient market hypothesis. And so if the LPs are making 6 to 8% a year, that's a good amount. And that's kind of on many peers what they're making. It's just if you have extractive systems that pull money out, it has to come from somewhere. And it means that the spread has to be higher, and that's a worse user experience. And like I said, I want us to have efficient markets with low spreads on chain. And I want the fundamental value of an app like Uniswap should be that there are people who want to trade token A for token B.
Yes.
And they have an urgent need to do so, and you're filling that, and they're willing to pay some,
spread
premium to do that. But we should work to make that timeliness premium, the spread, as small as possible, and we're not necessarily doing that right now. So,
what do you think of AMMs in the long run? And especially with shorter block times, are you is this still in your view where we end up trading?
You cannot do much better without censorship resistance. With censorship resistance from multiple concurrent proposers, you can do batch auctions, which is, I think, probably where we'll move to.
Oh, actually, I there was other question I forgot to ask you. There was some discussion about TEEs, trusted execution environments. At Flashbots, I know had a number of talks at ECC. Did you have any takeaways?
Can you just repeat the first word, what the first T stands for?
Trusted execution environment. Is that not right?
Trusted. No, it's exactly right. Trusted.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I mean,
so that kind of answers the question, but go ahead.
Hey, I put out a tweet. I said, if you want to build finance on trusted hardware, that's the end game of blockchains. That's pretty bearish to me. But, I guess it's slightly better than Binance on AWS or on Tokyo Exchange or Tokyo Server Farm, whatever, wherever Binance is. Slightly better, but that's not the situation that I want to head towards, which is basically if the NSA goes to NVIDIA or Intel and says you are required by law to put a 0 day into your device.
Yeah.
And the person at NVIDIA or Intel does not have a backbone about that, then we are headed for the US government controlling the blockchain. And that is exactly where we started from, right? The US government controlling the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
So what do you think about some of the proposals that Flashbots has put forth? I mean, it sounds like you're pretty bearish on that, but is that mainly what they're pushing right now?
Let me just say that the work that Flashbots is doing is incredibly important on the PBS side, and I'm bullish about that. And I think it's fine to workshop it in the TE environment because the development is a lot faster there, and it's a good bridge. But ultimately, I think what we should do is let's see what Flashbots is doing. Let's workshop it until it works on the TE, and then we're gonna work really hard to bring it onto the chain so that it doesn't rely on a trusted supply chain.
Yeah.
And also shout out what Flashbots is doing is they're pushing really hard for the TE providers to open source the tech to make that kind of US government NSA attack that I just described even harder. So that's also good. Dude, what did you think that I was going to come on here and blaze up flashbots or no?
No, I was just curious. Like, I didn't
I just
have
feel like the people who had that on their bigger card are like getting really rewarded right now.
No, I didn't have an opinion one way or another.
Off priority.
What? But on that note, what's going on with SUAVE? Also, what is SUAVE? Do you mind telling us the acronym?
Single unifying auction for value expression.
What's going on there?
I always thought the E stood for extraction, but I guess it stands for expression. That's probably just like a good Rorschach test for like me. But so I think the latest on this is that they are gonna basically build a network of trusted execution providers, like trusted execution hardware nodes, a network of them, and see what you can do with that. I mean, it kind of sounds like you can do exactly the same thing as you can do in a trusted execution environment with one of them, but maybe you have some kind of like reliability guarantees.
There are actors that need to opt into this.
Can I just say that like a trusted execution environment does not provide censorship resistance, which is a misconception, but I think the Flashbots people understand this as well. And they've talked about it, but a lot of people don't seem to understand that you cannot have censorship resistance on a trusted execution environment because you can literally intercept messages that come to the only thing that's trusted is what happens inside the chip. And censorship is a property like what goes into the chip. And so you can like kill the port, where you can like put the thing inside a Faraday cage or whatever, like figuratively. You can just not let the messages in, and that is not what a TE provides. And so maybe you need a network of them to provide the censorship resistance. And then that's the real unlock.
And there are actors that would need to opt into this system.
Yeah, for the network, I think there are.
Yeah. So is the incentive there? Like, this is, I guess, maybe a broader question. It's like there's a lot of these ideas, right? You have like espresso and flash. I mean, they're not necessarily like saying that these are all the same, but you have all these different actors like trying to work on these like sequencing and MEV and blockchain, like the supply chain, blah, blah, right? Like, and you need these block builders ultimately, at least in the current form, right? Like maybe you have a vision for a completely revamped Ethereum 3.0, I guess. But is there incentive for these powerful actors to opt into these new designs?
So I guess like, should I tell you what they would tell you?
You can tell me what they would tell me, and also you can tell me what you would tell me.
So I'll say first, I don't really understand their incentive to do this. I think they actually have a pretty good setup for them themselves.
Yeah.
But, you know, if they want to be altruistic and give us a better system by working together, then I'll be very happy about it. So they would say, this is like the traders, the builders who are traders would say that they would like to focus on trading and not have to deal with the builder. And also, like, if you run a builder that isn't secured by a TE with attestations about what it did, then people are always like, you know, they would tell me that like Beaver is like a really neutral builder that just treats all things the same. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not integrated. There's still some structural advantages, even if you fairly and faithfully execute the auction. But they would say that, which is, I have no reason to believe that's untrue. But because they're a trading firm and because they are, you know, kind of shadowy supercoders, like people always suspect that something happened. So they're always DMing them like, what happened to my transaction here? Look at this transaction hash. Like, why did you drop me? Why didn't I win this? Etc. Like, are you sandwiching me? Are you frowning me? And they're like, no, we're just running like the auction that we said we're running, but we can't attest to it. We don't want to deal with that. And we don't want to deal with BD as well. We don't want to deal with order flow BD. So they just want to trade, and, you know, maybe we can take them at their word. But I also think they have a pretty good gig right now in terms of the market power that they have in the system.
Yeah, but when they say they want to trade, like,
No,
do you mean
sorry.
direct?
They want to trade. They want to pick off the LPs.
There we go. Because like this
without
is
running a builder as opposed to picking off the LPs with a builder.
Yeah, I think like trade is a little of like a generous terminology there. I don't know if the like PR department told you to use that word trade, but like
the Beaver department.
I just I just wanted to clarify. This isn't like a big directional like alpha or whatever, right? Oftentimes it's just pure versions of arbitrage. So yeah.
Yeah, but like the side of the book, the maker who puts the quotes out and who risks the capital is the one who's actually providing the service to the trader, right? And the continuous double auction on, say, the New York Stock Exchange is what pushes those quotes tighter and tighter and makes the spread lower, right? And the makers are the ones who are doing that. And the takers are there to pick them off. But in most markets, there's a complementarity between being a maker and a taker. Because if you take your own order, it like cancels out. So if you're like 30% of the taker because you like 30% of you're winning 30% of the takes, then your makes are protected by 30% by your like take. We don't see that we don't see the biggest takers like Winchemute and Beaver being makers, even though they are like the vast majority of the taking that's going on. That is a fundamental flaw with the market structure that we have in place right now. And I'm pretty sure I know how to fix it. Surprise, multi-proposer, but like the person who makes the money from the take is basically always the proposer. And so even if you take your own stuff, the advantage that you get from taking it that you would get on like a central limit order book is like you cancel out the whole selection there. But in Ethereum, you don't cancel it out because you actually still have to bid with the other guys. So this is like very little advantage to being a taker as well as a maker. So that's like big difference between Ethereum and real financial systems that have real volume.
Interesting. Okay. I have no more questions. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to speak about?
Dude, what do you think about the death?
Oh yeah. I think Big Bird will come back. Just like I think Racer will come back. You have to hold out hope in these
Racer
things.
always comes back.
Racer does always come back.
Last time Big Bird was gone for a total of like less than 24 hours. But it's been more than 24 hours. So.
Well, we'll have to see. We lost a hero, but I'm optimistic.
The fight will go on without you, Big Bird. You did the Lord's work. You challenged authority. You woke up the king. You told him he has no clothes, and he listened and put some clothes on.
And now we're getting 2-second block times.
2-second block times. How bullish is that? Did you think we'd be talking about that like 3 months later after the last podcast that we did with Mr. Mike Meter, the Noiter?
Yeah, I need to get some. Like more ideologues on here to counter some of your claims. See if what you're saying is actually going to come into fruition.
I know I'm such a good demagogue, right? I need like some people to counteract the cadence here.
The cadence of Ethereum. That is so funny.
Last time I came on, I debated Mike. I think next time I come on, I should debate Justin. And the time after that, I'll debate with Alec. Or Tully.
All right. It's a plan. Yeah, we'll just have you on like the state of Ethereum every 3 months or so.
Yeah, just keep up with the roadmap.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, dude. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was awesome. Realignment is coming, boys. Peace out.